Hello, Mark.
Joe, how are you?
Very well. How are things today?
Things are going well. What song do you like your go-to song to pump you up? Like, so if you're going to karate and you need to get all charged up, you got a song that you like to listen to?
Oh, gee.
Or a genre?
So many songs. My, my Spotify playlist is over 1,000 songs now, and they're like pretty much all my favorite. So, but you know what? I've learned when you ask these questions that the response needs to be like the first thing that comes to
popped
mind.
into your head.
Yeah. So the first song that popped into mind right now is John K. Sampson's Vampire Alberta. I love that song. Do you know that song?
No, I don't know that song.
Oh, you need to look that up. It's a great song. He's a Canadian musician.
Yeah.
And it's satirizing Alberta and the oil fields and everything. But it's also an homage to another Neil Young song. So It's got that Canadian pedigree. And it's not like a pump you up song, but it's just a great song that I love to listen to every time it comes on my playlist.
It immediately made me think of Werewolves in London.
Yeah. It's in that same continuum.
Fabulous.
Yeah. And of course, we're like big speculative fiction guys. So of course, vampires, werewolves.
Yeah.
So what about you?
Well, mine's really cliche. Actually, especially after CSI Miami co-opted it. But The Who, Won't Get Fooled Again. There's just something about the start of that song that just gets me going. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And I guess this is an appropriate question for our guest today.
I think so.
Yeah.
John Scalzi, welcome to the podcast Recreative.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Great to have you. So do you have a song that, pumps you? This isn't our big question, which we're going to hit you with later.
Oh, no. You're softening me up for the big journalism.
That's right. A couple jabs before we hit you with the roundhouse.
Actually, I was thinking of something. It's that whole thing of like, if you have a personal theme, what would your personal theme be? And for me, there is a semi-obscure Danny Elfman song called Gratitude, which is off of his solo album entitled Solo, which wasn't really a solo album. It had all of the members of Oingo Boingo on it, but for contractual reasons, it had to be labeled as a solo album. So any event, Gratitude is just a great song because one, it's got that Danny Elfman voice, which, the younger generation will know as Jack Skellington. And of course the Oingo Boingo tunes, but it's also talking about the idea of, life's been so good to me. Has it been good for you? Has it been everything that you've expected it to be? And just the way that it goes across is it just, when I was younger, it just really hit me as being both cynical and hopeful at the same time. And the beat of it and the sound of it makes it really good, like wrestling villain enter music while confetti is exploding all around you and stuff like that. And I don't see myself as a wrestling heel. I want to be clear, but certainly that kind of energy is something that I can appreciate. And so for a good 30 years now, I would have to say that that's always been kind of tucked into my pocket of songs that I would include on my, on my personal, Tinder playlist. Like if you were get to know me in 5 songs, this is definitely one.
Yes.
Interesting.
That's from my workout. Like it's a good one to start with. It's like,
I tend to listen to my playlist is for like driving and cooking. So, yeah.
Not at the same time.
Not yet.
Not yet.
So it's been a long time since you and I first spoke. What year was that? Was that like
2003? It was
2003.
Yes, let's go back to 2003, and it is literally my first Worldcon, and it is in Toronto, Canada. I know you've heard of Canada, and and it was actually also, I think, like only my first or second time in Toronto. It was enough that like I went to the airport and I got to the ticket counter and I was like, I'm going to Canada. And they're like, that's great. Do you have your passport? And I'm like, what? Because I entirely forgot, because I'm a big dumb American. Canada is an entirely different country, and I didn't get on the plane. I had to drive home.
No way.
I had to drive home, and I had to get my birth certificate because I did not have a passport. But in 2003, you could still show your birth certificate and get across the border. And I literally drove like as fast as I possibly could from Ohio, where I live, to Toronto, where the Worldcon was. I made it 15 minutes before my very first ever panel. I sit down on the panel. I'm like, I can't believe I've made it. Oh my God. I had to just drive all the way here. This is my very first panel. I almost missed it. And they're like, oh, it's your first panel. Great. You're the moderator. So we met actually a couple days after that. I believe you were walking around with a microphone, and you were at the floor party, and I was just wandering around aimlessly, and you're like, this aimless looking fellow seems like he might be someone interesting to talk to. And I have no idea what I said to you at the time. I'm sure that there are tapes of it. But I probably did acknowledge that it was my very first Worldcon, and in fact, very first science fiction convention ever. So you got me really as early as you possibly could have in my entire science fiction career.
That's something we share. That was my first Worldcon too.
Well, you know what? And I met you there too, Mark.
Yeah, I met you there too. That's wild.
It's a big Worldcon reunion.
It is.
Awesome.
Yeah. So my 20 words or less version of that story is it was much easier for me because I worked across the street at the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. So yeah, it wasn't as hard. I didn't need any passports or anything like that. And it was actually Robert J. Sawyer who pointed me in your direction.
Oh, really?
Because I was doing a documentary for CBC Radio's The Current at the time, which is their big morning show. And it was on science fiction and on the convention. And I needed people to talk to. And he's like, you should talk to this guy because I think he's an up and comer. And I remember thinking, oh, I'll happily talk to him because he doesn't intimidate me. He's not like a huge name or anything like that. He's like me, So I felt like I was talking to, just like an ordinary bloke, just like myself. And we had a fantastic conversation in this. We went into... This sounds worse than it is. We went into a bedroom and closed the door, and there was a big party raging outside. And then we had this great conversation about your perceptions of being at your first Worldcon.
Yeah.
And and you told me the story about your first book coming out and how that had come about, how you'd serialized it on your blog. And and you made the final cut. There was definitely some quotes of you in the final documentary.
No, I'm glad it wasn't a complete waste of your time. No, I remember it too because it's always fun for me because I was a former journalist, right?
Okay.
So I have been in your position before where you're like, I have to find someone to talk to. Hopefully they have an interesting angle. Hopefully there's actually going to be a quote in here that I can use, right? So, I was your ally in the sense of I knew what you were doing. I knew kind of what you wanted in terms of quotes, and I didn't want to disappoint you. I mean, in my sense, I was like, if it makes it in, that's great. If it's not, it's Canada. I'm not going to hear it anyway. Although you did finally send it to me like 10 years later or something like that.
Well, yeah, because the flip side of that is that you're also in this select club of people that I have met who then later went on to great success. and Robert J. Sawyer is one of them because I worked with him on a show called Ideas at CBC Radio. And I remember he said to me, yeah, I'm going to be like a science fiction writer. And I'm like, good luck, pal. I'm the one who's going to be the science fiction writer. And then I watched in amazement as he went on to become Robert J. Sawyer.
Yep.
And then I interviewed you and you were like, yeah, I'm going to be a science fiction writer. And I'm like, yeah, right. I'm the one that's going to be the science fiction writer. And then I watched in amazement as you did basically the same thing as Sawyer.
Yeah.
And but then both of you are so incredibly gracious that you still talk to me. And I sent you the interview a decade later and you posted it on your blog and
Yeah.
So very cool.
I mean, the thing about it is that we've, it's the thing for me that there's no point in being a jerk, right? It's like, it's not like I've gotten too big for talking to X, Y, and Z. The moment you do that, you've really kind of started huffing your own fumes, and that's never a good thing. And also, I don't have any illusions about who I am as a person. It's sort of like, yes, I've been very fortunate in my career and all of those sorts of things, and I get to live the enviable science fiction writer life. But I also still have to take out the trash. I still look like the Pillsbury Doughboy. I still,
you're still very dapper.
No, and all these sorts of things is like I think my saving grace, because I do have a huge ego, I do have a huge like sense of well-being, but I also have a reasonably good sense of myself, and I don't put myself up on a pedestal. And also, it's very helpful that I have a spouse, my wife Christine, that literally every time she starts thinking I'm getting a little too big for my britches, she will reach over, she will pull on my earlobe and make a hissing sound, like to let the air out of my head.
Memento mori. Memento mori.
Yeah, that is exactly right. My wife awesome. Is like, yes, but I married you while you were still some schmo, so get it together.
Wow. So. And then on the other hand, then you've got Mark here, who since we've started this podcast has just become insufferable. So
what? Mark, you're the worst. I've only known you for what, 12 minutes and 12 seconds, but honestly, what is it?
No, Mark is amazing, which is why he's
I think all
this.
writers have an ego, frankly, even the ones who aren't as successful as you. To write something down and then think, people should read this. That's
no. I mean, I think that's absolutely correct. I think that's absolutely correct. I've always been a bit of an exhibitionist in, it's like, I've written something. It's funny. Here you go. Here it is. Read it. And I realized that I don't write if I don't have an audience, because people always gift me like journals, because you're a writer, you would love to have a journal. And I always say thank you, and I really appreciate the thought of it. I never write in them because I would be the only one who reads them. And I already know what I'm thinking because I'm in my own brain. But I have the blog, whatever, which has been up for almost 26 years now. And, and I write on that nearly every day because there's an audience for it. I am very, very much an audience-driven person. And that, again, relates directly to my ego. The idea that not only am I going to write something, but that it actually deserves to have an audience, which is hugely arrogant and has been ever since I was 14 years old, which is when I really started, the writing thing.
Okay, this is a perfect opportunity we always do this thing on this podcast where we know who you are. Mm-hmm. And obviously on our blog, we will have a big, write up about who you are.
Yeah.
Can you tell us in your mind who you are and what you've done?
Frame your own reality.
This almost sounds like the opening to, and now I segue into my Disney "Who Am I" song, right?
You can do it in song if you like.
Really? He said, he reaches over for his cute little guitar, and no, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah. Too bad. He had picked up an electric guitar there and was about to play it.
There he goes. It's a really cute one because it's called a Loog guitar. It's got 3 strings. It's designed for kids to learn how to play. But I got it just because I think it's cute and it's fun. And I have a ridiculous guitar collection for someone who is a terrible guitarist. I have like 10 or 15 guitars at this point, including one that has 6
You have
necks.
G.A.S. Oh my God.
Wow. Yes. Oh, yes, I definitely have G.A.S. Gear acquisition syndrome. It is a thing. There are literally, I have a regular Acoustasonic here. I've got the Loog guitar. I've got a Jazz Master ukulele right there. And here's one. And nobody who is listening to this will see it, but you guys will. This is my recent pride and joy. Ooh. This is a Eastwood octave guitar, which means that it is a guitar, but it starts at an octave to a regular guitar.
Wow.
Ooh. Listen to that.
It's amazing.
Now, what I love about this is that listeners to this podcast who don't actually know that you're a science fiction writer are now thinking, who's this musician that they're talking to?
And it's really funny because now I do actually have, because my COVID project, and I will preface this by saying I will get around to who I am.
Okay.
But my COVID project, because I was trapped in the house just like everybody else, some people did sourdough, some people learned how to knit. I was like, I am finally going to put together my music room and start recording and doing music. And so that was my COVID project. So I bought a whole bunch of musical instruments. I had some to begin with, but I bought more. I started recording music and I started putting it out on Spotify. So there are very, very few people who know me better as a musician than as a writer. And I can guarantee you all of those guys are 50-something electronic music nerds who are like, oh, I listened to your ambient music. It's awesome. and I love each and every one of them. Bless them for the end of their days. Because that's what I do. I do weird electronic ambient music because that's who I am. Anyway, Hi, I'm John Scalzi. And when I'm not doing weird ambient electronic music, I write science fiction books. My most well-known science fiction book, which was the one that had not yet come out when you and I first talked, Joe, is called Old Man's War. It will be celebrating its 20th anniversary next year.
Great book.
It is a
great book. And then other notable ones include Red Shirts, which won me the 2013 Hugo Award for Best Novel. Very recently, the most recent book was Starter Villain, which was nominated for the Locus Award and is currently nominated for the Hugo Award. And then I'll have a new book coming out next year, which is called When the Moon Hits Your Eye, which was about what happens when the moon literally turns into cheese. So that's who I am. And then I also, in addition to that, I also do some TV work, including writing episodes of Love, Death, and Robots, which is animated anthology series. Like I said, I play music sometimes. I do photography, and I think that's it. That's all I do.
Can I ask which ones did you do for Love, Death, and Robots? Because I love that show.
Yeah, I did the two ones that were the three robots.
Yes, love those.
There's 3 robots, and then in season 3 there was 3 robots exit strategies. There was When the Yogurt Took Over. There was Alternate Histories, in which I got to murder Hitler over and over again. So that's fun. And then Automated Customer Service, which was, robots gone wrong, as they so often do.
Yeah, that's such a great series. I haven't watched the whole thing yet. I'm like a season and a half in.
Those robots are great.
Oh yeah, no, it's great fun, and I've had a ton of fun working with it. The people who are involved with it, including Tim Miller, who is the person that I worked with most closely, have been just terrific to work with. Everybody has Hollywood horror stories if you've ever done anything with Hollywood, but I'm happy to say, working with Tim and Jennifer Yu Nelson, who is the supervising director for seasons 2 and 3, and Blur Studios in general, has just been wonderful. They're just lovely people. They always keep you in the loop. They're always soliciting feedback and asking you what you think about things. Sometimes they don't take your suggestions, but that's just the way things work, and they know what they're doing as well as anybody else. But the fact that they ask it all is great, and I can say that I've been just delighted with everything that's happened with that series so far. And they're going to have season 4 coming out at some point, and that will be great as well.
Yeah, very different experience than what I understand David Brin had with his movie Postman. Which is, one of my favorite books, and so disappointed in the movie.
The thing about it is that, and this is something that, so I was a film critic, and I did entertainment journalism for a number of years before long before I became a novelist. And one of the things I always tell people is you have to understand that when you option your book, they almost never say, this book is a treasure and we don't want to change anything. What they are really saying is, we think we can make money with some element of this book, and we will do whatever it takes to make that movie successful, even if it means completely changing almost everything else. And that's not necessarily a horrible thing. I mean, the confluence of things that are in When Androids Dream of Electric Sheep and Blade Runner are kind of slim.
Yeah.
So sometimes that sort of radical adaptation is not a bad thing, but you have to be aware that they are not buying the book per se. They are buying the idea of the book as they see it, and then they will just go to town. And if you're not ready for that, that can be a problem. And if you're not wanting to do it, then don't take their money. Just literally don't do it. You can say no. And honestly, for many writers, the only power that you have in adaptation is the ability to say no. Because once you say yes, once she's like, here's my baby, treat my baby well, and they're like, off we go to the circus, so.
Yeah, I've done a couple of adaptations, written a couple myself. I adapted the Cold Equations for radio.
Yeah.
And I could kind of see doing that, how, like, I was interested in respecting the original material, but I also came to look at it as like yet another draft of that material.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the whole thing is it doesn't matter. I mean, the book is the book. The book is the book of the book. And once it's been published, it's not going to change.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Everything else literally is an adaptation because it's going into a different medium. It's going to address a different audience. It has different motivations. Like, it's easy for me to write weird stuff because it's just me, and the economics of books are enough that if, bluntly, if 20,000 people buy the book, then we zero out and everything's fine. But if someone is going to spend $200 million to take a book, whether it's mine or anybody else's, and then put it out into movie theaters, it has to make that money back. That's $200 million for production, plus another $100 million for marketing and advertising. So you start off $300 million in the hole. You have to basically earn twice that to get to the point where you're in the black, because you have to share your money with the exhibitors and so on and so forth. So yeah. Anytime someone's like, I'm going to do a big blockbuster with that, yeah, they have to make more than $500 million before they even come close to, to zeroing out.
And it's collaborative.
And you just have to be aware that is a completely different thing. Whereas I, or another writer, it's like, when I started off, my Old Man's Wars advance was $6,500. I didn't have to sell that many books in order to get into the black. It's a very different economic scale.
Because you said this, once the book is done, the book is done. And what you're talking about really even happens at the book level, right? Because once it gets to a reader, the reader does the same thing that a producer is going to be doing. They're going to be envisioning things their own way. And it leaves us, and it's no longer ours. And that's part of what happens as a writer. You have to accept that.
Yeah. Well, no, it's very much the thing is the book is a conversation, right? Which is, I've presented you what I believe the book is, and the reader is going to read it, and they're going to do the visuals in their head. There's going to be like some characters who they like more than other characters, and why didn't you make this character more prominent? Or, and this is what fan fiction is all about, right? Which is, it's like, you did a great story, but now I want more, and you are too busy, like, paying your bills or something like that to give me what I want immediately. So now I'm going to write more in your universe for you. And I think it's great. I mean, people ask me every once in a while, it's like, they're playing with your characters. I'm like, yeah, they love my stuff so much that they can't wait on me to keep, playing with it. I can go ahead and buy that Mercedes.
Yeah.
Because I know that they will be there for the next book. I do have to tell people when they're like, I've written fanfic. I'm like, that's great. Never show it to me. Right. Because, for legal reasons, and also because sometimes they do things with my characters that I feel like, that is an interesting interpretation, and I don't want to know. But as far as it goes, the fact that people fan write is the kind of the greatest compliment you can get as a writer. It's like, that is just a signal that they really want more of what you are providing.
It's a wonderful compliment. It really is.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of the economics, and I'll just touch on this briefly because it is kind of a cool thing that happened to you, the whole business with that tour,
Yes.
and that massive advance you got. How much was it? Can I ask him?
So in 2015, I signed a 13-book contract with Tor, and it was for $3.4 million for all 13 books. It was very, very interesting when that happened. One, because I went into Tor. I had just finished a series with them. I'd finished the last book in the Old Man's War series until next year, where I'm going to do book 7. But I just finished it, and I was out of contract. And I was talking to my agent. I was like, I really hate going in and negotiating every single time. Let's go and say, give them like 13 ideas, right? And I wrote them out and I had them all presented. I said, let's give them 13 ideas, and they'll take 5. Right, or 7 or something like that. But just so we can say, just give us some sub so we don't have to think about it for a while. And we go in and we make the presentation to Tor, and it's like, here are the 13 ideas. And so pick the ones you want. And they said, thank you. We will take them all. And I was like, oh, well, okay. And then we had the negotiation for how much that would cost them. And it went back and forth. And we finally settled on the 3.4 million as the base rate. And I remember there was going to be an article about it in the New York Times. And I mentioned to Chrissy, again, my wife, they're going to do a story about it. They are going to have to talk about the money. And my wife is the one who is like, be careful about talking about the money, because authors should talk about the money that they get, because other authors need to know what is going on with the field, right? But for folks like me, after a certain point, my wife said it stops being information and starts sounding like bragging.
Yeah.
Right.
Did she pull in your ear?
Yeah, no, she was like, just so you know. So I said, they're going to do a story about it in the New York Times about this deal, because it's a big deal. It's big because of the length and because of the money. And she's like, do they have to mention the money? I'm like, yes, if they don't mention the money, there is no story. Again, journalism. What's the hook? Tons of money. Here's a hook. So that came out. And what was really fascinating was watching people respond to it. Some people are like, very cool. He's set for a long time. Other people's like, but he could get more if he's self-published. Or there are people's like, he's only making like $300,000 a book. That doesn't seem like that much. And my brain, when people were saying that, was like, are you listening to yourself? The 300,000 or whatever is the base rate, because then after that comes the audiobook, after that comes the foreign sales, after that come the film and TV options.
Yeah.
Then if they ever earn out, then becomes the royalties and all this sort of stuff. This is the base rate. If all I do is write 1 book a year, I'm in the 1% for, the United States and Canada, for all of North America. Are you sure that that's not enough? How much more do you want me to have, basically?
Yeah. To me, it's a kind of a healthy sign, isn't it, for the science fiction ecosystem and for writers at a time when I think a lot of people are kind of despairing of.
Yeah. Well, I think what they saw, and I think one of the things that worked in my to my advantage was that one, I was writing stuff that was accessible, that it wasn't just for dyed-in-the-wool science fiction readers. You could give it to your dad, or you could give it to someone who's a friend who's like, I like science fiction, but I don't know where to begin. Right? I think my role is I'm 100% a science fiction writer, but I am a science fiction writer who is an ambassador to the mainstream. That was kind of,
you don't have the barrier to entry that a lot of them do.
Right. And that is a very real thing. And it is also something that both Tor and I understood that's my role. This is kind of, people are like, well, that's kind of a gilded cage, isn't it? Like you have to write accessible science fiction. What if you want to write something that's, complicated and twisty and all this sort of stuff? And I was like, well, one, you can do that and still make it accessible. But the other thing is if I want to go completely wild and write something incredibly weird, then that's where Subterranean Press, which is a small press that I work with here in the US, comes in, because they will take it in novella form. So as far as it goes, I didn't feel too constrained. But also, I like writing the thing that I write. But the other thing is it was Tor's way of saying in 2015 that we are going to be here for a long time. Not only with John Scalzi, obviously, but for other writers as well. And Tor has made other similar moves with other writers. They made it with Victoria Schwab, V.E. Schwab. They've made it with T.J. Klune, who is Canadian, with their books. So as far as it goes, I was the first of these sort of significant contracts that Tor did, but I'm by no means the last of them. And that is Tor saying to the world, not only are we going to be around, but science fiction is going to be around, and we believe that it's going to be doing well for a long time. And they've been right about that. When I started out writing science fiction in 2003, the science fiction that you would see on the bestseller lists were either the golden age science fiction era writers who had already built their audience over 20, 30 years, but mostly it was Star Wars books, right? They were the only really reliable science fiction and to some extent fantasy that would make it onto the New York Times bestseller list. Now, here in 2024, there's hardly a week where there's not science fiction or fantasy regularly on the adult hardcover and adult combined print and ebook lists. So Tor was right. Science fiction and fantasy is here. Not only is it here, it's no longer stuck economically. It's no longer stuck in a genre ghetto. It is absolutely
mainstream.
Absolutely mainstream. So it was a good bet for Tor, not just in me, but in the genre in general.
That's very cool. And it totally is mainstream.
Mark, I have to say, Mark, I think you would be doing better if you worked on your spelling. I'm just looking at your shirt.
I love this shirt. This shirt.
His shirt is there spelled THEIY''RE.
It's all the misspellings at once.
Yeah.
We'll talk
My
about
library
that
information science students can't stand this shirt. I've learned I can't lecture to them while I'm wearing this shirt because their brains can't take it for very long.
It causes physical
pain. I can see it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I apologize if it's hurting you today, John.
No, it's fine. I mean, you can't see it out here. I'm wearing my Poe as a skeleton shirt. So.
Ooh, macabre. Yeah.
Yes.
So, Mark, do you think it's time for us to pose you're the question guy in this podcast.
Well, so what's your party piece? What do you want to talk about today?
Oh, geez. What do I want to talk about today? It's so hard.
It is. But there's no wrong answer.
The thing is, there is no wrong answer. I'll be honest. I mean, I've had a lot of fun recently doing music. I would love to talk to you guys about that simply because I have a philosophy of why I do music, even though no one listens to it, and why it is actually beneficial for me to do it for my actual career, which is writing science fiction.
Mm-hmm.
So we can talk about that. And I guess the place that I would start is very recently I did 2 covers of music, and you can find them online. And one of them was Fake Plastic Trees by Radiohead. And the other was If You Leave by OMD, which I did with Paul and Storm, who are a sort of humorous musical combo. And we did that song as if You Leave, for the kids out there, is from the soundtrack of the 1980s teen film Pretty in Pink. And OMD is a synth pop band. So very poppy and lots of synthesizers and, 80s drums and stuff like that. And the way that we did it was as if it was a 50s Sun recording studio session down in Memphis.
Oh,
right?
Wow.
And I was doing the lead singing of that. And I was, singing it like it was Elvis, if you leave, don't leave now. Please don't take my heart away. Just like that. And so
I'm going to throw some reverb on that in post. And
yeah. Well, that's exactly what we did. And they're both out in the world, and I'm really proud of both. One, because the OMD one is just ridiculous. It's always fun to throw out your party trick, and my party trick is doing an Elvis voice, right? And then with the Fake Plastic Trees one, I've been doing music production, like I said, basically since the pandemic. And this was the first time I've done a number of cover songs, and I put them up on the website. And this was the first time I've done a cover song that I feel like I've really hit it. Like the combination of having developed the competence to do it and doing a cover that sort of approaches that. I want to be very careful about this, but like approaches something that you would actually hear if you went on the radio.
Yes.
Right. Be like, it's almost radio ready sort of thing. And as a person who is a creative person, right, knowing that whenever you start a new type of project, right, or new sort of creative endeavor, well, for me, it's photography and music, right, that there is that long period of suckitude, right?
Yes.
you're gonna suck, right? Especially if you're doing music, like, to go with these guitars, right? If you just pick up a guitar, you are not gonna bang out a guitar solo that's going to be amazing, because you don't know the relationships of the strings to the music. You don't know how to do chords. You have to spend time learning how to do that. And so with production of music, it's the same sort of thing. You've got to learn like the digital audio workstation, which is the thing that you record into and run the synthesizers and everything through, and so on and so forth. There's a learning curve, that. So you start noodling around. And so for the first like 2 or 3 years, just like with writing, you basically produce stuff that sucks. It's not good, but it has benefit, because here is a thing that you are doing that you are learning.
Yeah.
Right? You are learning how to do it. And so the joy of it is actually the learning how to do it. And so with the fake plastic trees, that was the first time where I feel like it's like, it's not just learning. It's not like, oh, it's not bad for someone who doesn't know what he's doing. It's like, no, this is actually decent. It's not Radiohead. Tommy Art does not have anything to worry about.
So you didn't bring in Nigel Godrich to produce you?
It was tempting. But I let that one go. But it was for basically doing it in the basement. I was pretty happy with it. And then obviously with the If You Leave with Paul and Storm, they are actually musicians. They have been doing that for 20, 25 years. And to be able to have my voice sit in the mix of what they were doing and not sound completely and wholly out of place, it's basically the first time where I've listened to what I've been doing and been like, yeah, no, I am actually a musician now, as opposed to a dude wailing away on his guitar or on his keyboard or his computer keyboard, trying to figure things out. And all of this is actually important for my writing, because I'm going to get to this. Writing is my job, right? I really enjoy writing. I would be doing writing even if I wasn't paid for it. Don't tell my publisher.
I think they
know. But the simple fact of the matter is, not only is it something I enjoy doing, not only is it my profession, but I have 30 years of professional experience with it, and I am adept at it in a way that only comes through experience. But the flip side of that is, because it is my job, there are expectations about how I do that job. Like I said, the contract with Tor exists because it is understood that regardless of what type of science fiction that I write, whatever the subject matter is, however I present it, that it is still going to be accessible, that they are still going to be able to put it out and draw in people that they haven't necessarily gotten before. I am meant to be at the door saying, come on in, science fiction. You thought it was just for nerds. It is, but it's not just for nerds anymore. It could be for you, that sort of thing. I am the huckster at the door. So that's the gig, right? So, and I love it and I accept that. And that's what I do. But it also means that I exist in a very specific space. When I'm doing music or when I'm doing photography, I'm not making any money off of it. I am 55 years old. I will never become a pop star at this age, right? It's too late for me.
Well, I didn't think you were going to be a famous science fiction writer either. So you never know.
I could pull it off, but it seems unlikely, especially since what I'm doing is fiddly electronic ambient music, the kids are not screaming for that, right? They're not saying it's like I'm going to tour with him like I tour with Taylor Swift, right? Never going to happen. But that's fine because my dozen of fans, DOZEN, no S there, is actually really great, because if there's no expectations, there's no worry about that, then I don't want to say it doesn't matter what I do, but it means that I can enjoy it purely as the exercise of creativity.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And I think that that's really important for creative people, that particularly if there's some aspect of your creativity that is your job, right? That you have another aspect where it is purely just what you do for yourself. If no one ever listens to anything that I put out musically, and like I said, I've seen my Spotify streaming numbers. It's as close to zero as you can get without, actually being zero. That's fine, because I have enjoyed the process. I enjoyed the music that I put out. I've enjoyed the creative exercise of doing them, and not having the expectation of saying, now it has to be accessible to 100,000 people. And to have that sort of gives me a grounding to go back to my writing, which again, I absolutely love. I write the way that I do because that's the way I want to write, but it still comes with expectations. It still comes with pressures. It still comes with, I do have to at least try to earn out the money that they put into me. And so that is really useful to be able to go back to that, going, okay, I've done weird ambient 10-minute track that is just noodling, and now I can go and center myself in this funny dialogue that makes people laugh.
So it really does energize you when you just play the music. You go to do the music, and it's just like a break almost.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Because doing creative things is important to me, right? I mean, even when I'm not doing the writing, I'm more likely to be fiddling around on a guitar than watching a movie, like, for example, simply because it activates part of my brains that are enjoyable. I mean, sometimes I do just want to watch a movie. Chrissy and I watched a movie last night on Netflix, and it was 100% a Netflix movie, which was like, my brain is dead. Look at the pretty lights, click, right. And sometimes there's absolutely that. But a lot of the time I want to be doing something creative, and I don't necessarily want to be doing the writing. And like I said, that's where the music comes in, or that's where the photography comes in, and just endless sort of, like with the photography, for example, it's like I take the picture and I load it into Photoshop, and then I spend hours just moving a little slider back and forth, being like, what does this do? What does this do? And then finally I get the picture, exactly where I want it. And again, no one's asking me to be a professional photographer, but the end result of that is I've created a piece of art that I've enjoyed, and the process of it has been something that I really enjoyed as well. And there's no deadline on it. Nobody's sitting there going, where's that batch of photographs? Which doesn't happen with the writing. I just finished a novel, When the Moon Hits Your Eye, and then immediately had to jump in and write a novella, and I had finished that. And both of those, there were very hard deadlines that I couldn't miss. And so even though I loved writing both of them, and I think both of them are very good, racing to hit that deadline was a little excruciating, especially because one was directly right after the other. And so, after that was done, my brain was like, you're not going to be thinking again for another 2 months.
Can I ask you a question about that deadline business?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I think that
this is literally why I'm here, to answer your question.
That's great. We're not even paying you for it.
No.
Maybe I shouldn't get into that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, Mark, but like, we're serious about writing, but we're not, writing at the same professional level as John.
Yeah, it's not our living.
Yeah. I mean, I have a work in progress, and I couldn't tell you when it's going to be done because I don't have a deadline, and because I'm trying to hit this quality bar. But your stuff is already, it's hitting a quality bar anyway. But is there a tension for you with between the quality and the getting it done with the deadline, or how does that work?
Yes and no. I mean, the thing is, there has to be a certain amount of time, otherwise it's not good. Partly because I don't outline, I write, and I find out what I'm doing as I'm writing it. So I have to have a certain amount of time for exploration. right? And that is an aspect. So if I have to rush, either it needs to be really short, like all the short stories that have become part of Love, Death, and Robots were usually about 2,000 words or less. So I can, bang it out in a couple of hours, or it has to be something that I've thought about so much that all I'm essentially doing is typing. But for everything else, there has to be some time for that creative process. At the same time, for me, I have found over time that I actually do with novels and novellas and short stories, stuff like that. Having a deadline is actually incredibly important for me.
I was waiting for that
because
you're a journalist.
No,
start,
absolutely,
right?
Yeah. Well, here's one thing is that, to go back to the thing about the journalist thing, it absolutely matters, right? Because I worked at a newspaper. Everything had to be in by 3 p.m. or it didn't get into the next day's paper, right? Or for the weekend paper, for the Sunday paper, everything had to be in by Wednesday, because I was the entertainment section. It's not like we were like, last minute news or anything. So it all had to be in by a certain amount of time, and there were no excuses. It just had to be done. And now I did that for years, literal years, where it didn't matter, here's a deadline. If you miss it, you're not only do you screw yourself, but you screw everybody else. Somebody has to make a desperate dive through AP to find a story that fits exactly the news hole that you've been given.
News hole.
And all of that sort of stuff. You learn not to do it. And that's been hugely helpful in sort of sticking with the deadlines. But the other thing is that if a deadline is June 30th, right? Just as pulling a number out of the air, I know how long it takes me to write a novel, right? And so knowing when that deadline is, it's like at a certain point in the beginning of May, my brain says, okay, you're done screwing around.
Yeah.
Get it done. Because otherwise you're going to be absolutely miserable. And so whether or not it's like at this point, again, 30 years on, at this point, it's not even really conscious. Like, in the perfect world, as soon as I had a book idea that I knew that I had to do, I would write 500 words a day so that I would get it in a smooth and even sort of thing. But that's not how my brain works. My brain was like, oh, now I got to start, a year out, I kind of vaguely start thinking about it. Then 3 months out, I'm like, oh no, I really have to start thinking about this. And then 2 months out, oh shit, I really have to start writing this. And then like a third of the book gets written in the last 2 weeks. It's just that collapse, right? But at no point am I not writing. It's just, my brain is noodling, my brain is thinking about things, and it gets to that certain point. And that has come in handy. Like there's a book in the Interdependency series, which is called The Collapsing Empire. It's the second book in the series, right? And I got the deadline wrong in my brain. I thought it was like 2 months later than it was. And then one day I look at my calendar, my Google calendar, and this is the truth. It was June 4th, and the deadline was June 18th. And the amount that I had written, that I had actually typed out in the book, was big fat 00, right? And so I had 2 weeks to write out that book. And I turned to Chrissy, and this is my joke. I turned to Chrissy and I was like, you're going to shove food under the door. Once a day, there's going to be a jug by the side of the door. You will take that away. I was like, no to the jug, because the bathroom is literally right next door to your office, but yes to the shoving food in. And so I wrote 80,000 words in 2 weeks. And when I tell that to people, and I didn't tell people about that until the book was published, it had gotten a couple star reviews, it hit the New York Times bestseller list. After all of that, I figured it was okay to let people know it took 2 weeks to write it. But it didn't take 2 weeks to write it. It took 2 weeks to type. It took a year to write because I had been mulling it over in my head. So the deadline is incredibly important to tell my brain when to stop screwing around and actually start typing. And without that, it does get kind of aimless for me. There's so many ideas that I have that are not part of my book contract that I'm like, I should write that. I like right now, I finished a novella. I have 2 months of downtime before I have to start writing the next book. And part of my brain is going, oh, but you could write all these other little things that you I wanted to do. I was like, yes, I could do that. But there are video games and there are
And
naps. So guess what I'm going to do? There's no deadline attached to them. And I have music to play. There's no deadline attached to it. So those things will probably not get done unless at one point someone says, that's a really great idea. I will buy a book or whatever with that. And now there's a deadline attached and then I have to do it. So,
okay, now I have to go down a bit of a rabbit hole and put on the journalist, the hard journalist hat here.
Oh boy.
Oh no.
I can't wait.
You had thought about that novel for a long time and then wrote the 80,000 words in essentially 2 weeks.
Yeah.
My question is, well, it's more of a statement, really, is you can't have been that precious about the prose.
Well, that was one of the reasons why I waited to see if anybody had caught me, right? Because like I was writing it so quickly that when I turned it in, I had no ability in my brain to comprehend whether what I had written was actual competent prose or not, right? Because it was so focused on just getting it out that I was like not worried about making it pretty. And this is, in my particular case, this is where both 30 years of professional writing and at that point, 15 years, 16 years of writing novels, having that muscle memory really came in handy because my brain knew how to do all of that stuff without me focusing on it per se. The thing is that quite literally, most people don't know that I wrote that I typed out that book in 2 weeks. And like I said, the reviews, nobody knows your process. Nobody knows whether a book takes a year, 3 months, 3 years, 10 years. What they know is here's a book. How does it work? Like I said, we didn't tell anybody whether this book, how long it took to write this book until well after the book was out in the world. And as far as we can tell, both from the professional reviews and from the reader reviews and from everything else, nobody else could tell either, which either means that my default level of writing is shit, which there are a lot of people who would be more than happy to agree with me on that, or it means that so much of what the writing process is and how I write and my particular style of voice is so inculcated into just my brain as it is that even without consciously writing for style, that style will come out anyway.
Well, and I want to contextualize the question a little bit because in no way am I suggesting that I think that your prose was shit.
You're a horrible writer. How have you become so successful?
No, the reason I bring it up is for a couple of reasons. Number one, I'm way too precious, which is why, my work is taking me too long. But the second thing is that I've also learned over time, I seem to be more successful when I write like I talk.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you're writing it out that quickly, you're getting the story out. And to your point, you are already writing at a certain level of prose quality.
Yeah.
So I actually think that's a very instructive lesson.
Yeah.
The fact that you could do that and maybe more of us should.
Yeah. No, absolutely. You should not do that. No. And 100% no. And all the people who are listening cannot see how wide my eyes
Wish
are.
we could have a screenshot of that.
I basically wrecked my brain writing 8,000, 10,000 words a day for two straight weeks. It's just it was not a comfortable experience at all. The story I tell is that when I turned it in at 7:00 in the morning on the day it was due, like literally the latest that I could possibly turn it in, I was so enervated and just my brain was like fizzing and I couldn't go to sleep, even though I was desperately tired. I was like, I'm going to go downstairs and I'm going to watch Teen Titans Go, which is this animated TV series on Cartoon Network that, is designed for children. And I'm like, that's the speed my brain is working right now. And 10 minutes in, I had to turn it off because there was too much going on. Chrissy tells me that it took a week for me to basically respond in a manner that was like even approaching human. So it was not a good experience. But what I do think is true is that at a certain point you learn to trust yourself. You learn to like, let's just get this down and then we can tweak it when it's done. And I do think there is a thing that writers do, which is that they're much harder on themselves than any other person is going to be, right? And so they want to have the exact sentence hit exactly how they want it to hit, and do all this, or polish it as much as they can before they move on to the next thing. The problem with that is quite simply, until you have the entire thing, right, you're not going to be able to see whether or not the 2 hours that you spent highly polishing that one sentence for maximum punch is going to make sense in the larger sense of the thing. And so honestly, I do think, and again, everybody's process is different. You find what works for you and you do it, right? But I do think by and large, for most people who are writing, the best thing to do is get it out. Do that, as they call it, the vomit draft or the barf draft or the first draft, whatever you want to call it. Get that out and it'd be like, this is a broken pile of crap, but now it's out and now I can learn how to fix it. And that's what revising and drafting. And
I had a follow-up question.
Now, I don't do a lot of doing first draft and then second draft. When I type the end, I almost immediately send it right out the door. But that is because during the process of writing, like I will write about 2,000 words a day. I'll quit for the day. I come back. I will read those 2,000 words that I had just written. I'll do all the tweaking that I need to do, write the next 2,000 words. And in the course of that, if there's something I need to fix, I will go back and fix it in the process. It's the same amount of editing, but it has the same effect. But the whole point of it is it has to be out so you can look at it and be like, oh no, this is what I need to do to make this particular thing work. Nobody sees process. They only see the end result. Yeah. And as long and people really who are writers really need to internalize that no one ever sees process. No one ever sees process. I will tell a story that is related to this, comes from the world of music. I used to be a music reviewer, and I did a review of a Cult album, the band The Cult.
Yeah.
It was their like 2001 or 2002 album Beyond Good and Evil, which one, if you name your album after a Nietzsche book, you're already asking for trouble. But I listened to it and I gave it like a C, right? I was like, if you are a Cult fan, this is the thing that you will find it perfectly cromulent. If you're not, there's not much here for you. The review comes out, and a couple weeks later, I get an all caps angry email from Ian Astbury, who is the lead singer of The Cult.
Okay.
And I'm going to do an accent here that I have no idea if that's his accent or not. He's like, you have no idea how much blood and sweat went into making that album. Your review is absolutely unfair. And so I write him back. I'm like, one, what are you doing? Don't respond to reviews. That's bad news.
Yeah.
Two, I don't care how much blood and sweat went into it. I'm not here to review the blood and sweat. I'm here to review the album. The album was mediocre. And three, 2 weeks from now, no one will have remembered that I ever wrote this review, and you will still be the guy who wrote Love Removal Machine, so maybe you should get a grip. And then I send that off, and then a couple days later, there's an email not in all caps. He's like, you've made some very excellent points. Thank you.
Nice.
And I think but the same again is with writers. Nobody cares about the process. Get it out, take a look at it, be like, okay, now I can fix the things that need to be fixed. And then eventually you have to stop fixing. It gets out the door. But that's what having editors and for some people, beta readers and all that sort of stuff. It is sufficiently good for the purposes of taking it out into the world and seeing who.
Yeah, that was my follow-up, is how much trust do you have to have in your editor in that particular situation where you've blasted this thing out about as quickly as any human being could do it, frankly.
I've been very fortunate. I mean, Patrick Nielsen Hayden, who's my editor, is a very good editor, and we have a good relationship. And he, calls me on my bullshit when I need to be called on my bullshit. And also my wife, I read the chapters to her, or she reads them as they come along. Great. And so I can tell my wife loves me too much to tell me when I'm, pretend that I'm not writing at the top of my game. So as far as it goes, between the two of those, it's fine. But the other thing is that, again, I know what the expectations are, and I know what I want to write, what I'm expected to write, and I also know how I write leaves them almost no time to, before it has to go into post-production. So I usually turn in pretty clean copy. Like the book that I just turned in, When the Moon Hits Your Eye, maybe had like a page of editorial notes, and those were very specifically, I think you should use this word here, not this word, and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. I get very, very few notes. And again, I really do take that back to my journalism training, that it has to be as clean as possible before you put it in. The most important thing that ever happened to me was, as a writer, is I spent 2 years being an editor and dealing with other people's writing. Specifically, I was the editor of a humor site. Humor is very hard for lots of people to do particularly successfully. I would have 1,000 applications, for basically 20 positions. And after going through like 1,000 stuff, I would still have 10 things left over, or 10 slots left over. So I would have to go back and tweak things and show people how to do it. And 2 things happened out of that. One, I became an editor, which is incredibly important. But the other thing is that I became so much less precious about my own writing. I went back and looked at my writing after having been an editor. I'm like, who told this guy he could write? Yeah. This is crap. And I've been very fortunate that my own crap level, or my own awareness of my ability to churn out crap if I'm not paying attention, is very high. And I'm also very easily bored as a reader. So if I'm writing something and I'm bored reading it while I'm writing it, then I know there's a problem. And so I will usually either address it immediately or come back the next day, again, with the, that's what the process of editing is for, and deal with it. And being not precious, again, with one's writing, and being able to call yourself out on your own crap is really important. Now, I want to stress that the way that I write, because it is humorous and because it is not ornate and all that sort of stuff, there are a lot of people who just don't like it. Right. They're like, this is not the writing that I want, this specific thing. And so there are a non-trivial number of people like, hey, I guess he's okay. Or no, he's actually not a good writer at all, because taste is what taste is. The fact of the matter is I'm a very good writer of a very specific type. And if you don't like that type, then you will never be happy with what I write. And not only is that okay, I am perfectly happy with that, because what it means is there's so much other writing out there that is going to be to your taste. Please stop reading me, who will never make you happy, and read some of these other amazing writers who don't write like me and who will be people that you love.
Yeah. I love the idea that there is a difference between taste and quality.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, there absolutely is. And wisdom comes when you learn that is the fact. There are so many writers who I read their stuff, and objectively I'm like, holy crap, this is amazing. And subjectively is like, I don't want to read this anymore.
Yeah.
Right. And it is not that they are not good writers. It is that the specific type of thing that I want to read is not this. And I would more than happy to champion these writers as great storytellers, great writers, even if I am not individually interested in them, because again, 30 years of doing this professionally, I know good writing when I see it. And I also know what my own tastes are, and they don't always overlap. conversely, there's a lot of crap that I'm just happy to read because I'm like, oh yeah, this is what I like. But is it good writing? As a matter of, grammar and style and everything else? No. Is it making me happy? Absolutely. And in that sense, it's good. But there is a difference in it. Just like there's some music that I love that I'm like, oh, this is crap music. But you know what? Let's do it. And other music where I'm like, this is amazing music, and I never want to listen to it again.
John, we could talk to you forever. In fact, I think we could have an entire series of podcasts, just conversations with John Scalzi.
We might have to pay him for that, Joe.
But I have one last question, and then I'll ask Mark if he has one last question. I read a story that you had flipped a coin earlier in your career about whether or not you would write science fiction to fantasy or mysteries.
Yeah.
And how do you think things? Do you ever wish that that it had come up mysteries?
No, I don't. For a couple of reasons. One is it turns out you can write mysteries and science fiction. So, I mean, I've written the Dispatcher series. I've written the Lock-In series. So that itch is being scratched within the genre of science fiction. So I got to have my cake and eat it too, as it were. And the other reason is, so when I was 32, right, just before Old Man's War got sold, and then I embarked going to science fiction conventions where I met you, and meeting other science fiction writers, I had told my wife that I thought I had made all the friends that I was ever going to make in my life. Right. Because I was 32, I knew all the people that I knew. Right. And I was fine with that. But then I got into the science fiction community, and the science fiction community is a slightly different writers community than a lot of different types, because they have the conventions, because they have, because essentially science fiction as a written genre in the United States, and I think Canada as well, came out of enthusiasts for the very first wave of science fiction writers, then becoming writers themselves and being in contact with each other. The community of science fiction is materially different than so many other genre writing communities. And so some of my best friends and some of the people who are most important to my life, writers and fans and and editors and so on, have been people that I've met in the last 20 years. And I don't know that I wouldn't know the same people, for one thing, if I had gone and written mysteries and crime fiction. And I don't know that I would know as many different people. So for me, I made the right decision, not only in terms of the genre of the writing, but all the benefits that come out of having been part of that genre for the last 2 decades. I think I made the right decision.
Cool. Mark, any final thoughts, questions?
That actually answers my question, because you want a Hugo for fan work too, right? I don't know what the title was that. So my question was, what relationship did that have to your, progression as a writer? Clearly it had a huge impact.
It was really interesting to me because, the fact of the matter is I had not had any interaction at all with the science fiction fan community until 2003 at the convention where we met, Joe. And, because I'd never done it. I had gone to a Star Trek creation convention as a reporter in Visalia, California. And it was a one-day convention, and Michael Dorn was the guest. And so basically I stayed until Michael Dorn said what he had to say, and then I hightailed it out there because I had a story to write. But as part of being part of that community, it was something that I was completely new to. And it was really interesting to me to learn about it and to become part of it. And the fan writing came out of writing the blog and writing about the science fiction community as I was encountering it and so on and so forth. And it was a controversial win at the time, partly because up until I won the Fan Writer Award, which was in 2008, it had basically been won by 3 people: Mike Glyer, Dave Langford, and I think Bob Tucker. And Dave Langford had won it 19 years in a row, right? It had become the best Hugo for being Dave Langford, right? And so one of the things that I'm really proud of is that when I won the fan writer Hugo, one, it was immensely gratifying because I did feel like it was the fandom, the community saying, one of us, one of us, one of us, because they read the blog. They saw that I was actually really happy to be part of this community. And this was their way of saying, yes, you are in fact one of us. But the other thing I said is I got the award, and I'm literally looking at it over here in the, in my shelves. And I took it. I was like, this is amazing. Never give this to me again. There are so many other writers who deserve this award. Please use this to look far and wide. And I'm happy to say that since 2008, there has never been a repeat winner. Mike Glyer won again, 30 years after he won his last one. But on a year-to-year basis, it's always somebody new. It did the thing of reminding people that that fan writing is a wide and diverse field that has so many people in it who are doing good writing about the community, about the field of science fiction and fantasy. So I think that was really the most important thing to come out of me winning that particular Hugo. Not that I won the Hugo, but that people were reminded that fan writing is actually a vital part of the community, and also that the community acknowledges that it's the community observing itself is important. And also, like I said, because they said, yeah, Scalzi, you're one of us. So.
John Scalzi, thank you very much for being on our podcast, Recreative. It's great to talk to you again after all this time.
Yeah, sorry I missed you at Toronto.
Yeah, no, we'll get into a time machine and fix that.
Recreative is produced by Mark Rayner and Joe Mahoney. Technical production and music by Joe Mahoney. Web design by Mark Rayner. Show notes and all episodes are available at recreative.ca. That's re-creative.ca. Drop us a line at joemahoney@donovanstreetpress.com. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for listening.